So that's one thing that's quite unique about cocoa is it is purely an export product, just
Mm-hmm.
about. Second thing is very concentrated. So there's like 8 countries in the world where
Mm.
almost all of the world's cocoa is grown. And in the rest of the countries where cocoa is grown, it's often kind of unique quality heirloom. And so kind of the issues there might be slightly different as far as kind of from a bulk perspective.
Mm.
I think another thing that's important, especially for people from a coffee background, the specialty market in cocoa is very small. Like the vast majority of people that consume cocoa and chocolate basically have never had good chocolate.
This episode is proudly brought to you by Mapper Forward's workshop. It's time to become a coffee consultant. Learn how to diversify your revenue streams and create freedom from your day job while saying goodbye to that alarm clock forever by becoming a consultant within the coffee industry or directly to consumers who have shifted towards home brewing and home roasting. Protect your income from challenging times in the coffee value chain by taking this course today. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for details.
Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 1 of a brand new series on the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward. And today I am joined by Antonie Fountain from the Voice Network. Antonie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Lee.
We have had an outstanding number of people contact me and say, can we get someone on the podcast to talk about cacao? And so we are doing a series about what's going on in cacao. And I am particularly fascinated by this from the perspective of the correlation between cacao and coffee. Now, we will touch on that through this series. But Antonie, I heard you on a podcast. I can't remember for the life of me what that was. But I heard you on this podcast. You had a fantastic conversation about what's going on in cacao, and I contacted you so that we could have a similar conversation here. So could you tell folks, and you generously said yes, so thank you. So could you tell folks what you do in cacao so that we can kick this off?
Absolutely. And it was my pleasure to say yes. I mean, I get
Thank
to
you.
talk for a long time about something that I'm passionate about. So
Thank you.
why would I say no, right? So quick intro. I've been working in sustainable cocoa for the last, better part of 2 decades. I run a network of 30 plus NGOs and trade unions, and we look at the sustainability of cocoa in all its problems. And so
Okay.
that's kind of how I've rolled into this. I've been doing this for a little while now. And that's me. I think that was the question, right? I've already
Right.
kind of sidetracked myself there. Sorry.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So when you say you work with NGOs, you kind of tell me what my real question here is your relationship with trading coffee? Is your relationship with working with the people who work in coffee? Let's get a little more specific about your role in cacao. Sorry, I
Yes.
said coffee. That's a habit. I'm really sorry about that.
I
Cacao.
started to work in coffee in the last 2 years, and I do it exactly the same way, but
Okay,
the other way.
fantastic.
So
Okay.
I'm on the same page there. So our job is to basically have relationships with everybody, right? So I
Okay.
speak with farmers, I speak with local chieftains, I speak with people from governments in origin countries, I speak with unions, I speak with community organizers, I speak with the NGOs at the national, at the global, at the local level. We speak with the huge companies, whether that's Nestle or Mars or Hershey's, et cetera. We speak with the governments here in the global north, whether that's the US government or the EU, et cetera. So we connect with everybody, and that's our job, is to kind of make sure that we understand what's going on.
And remind me, how is your the business set up? So is it a non-for-profit? Is it a for-profit business? What is it?
No, we're a not-for-profit association. So basically I'm based in the Netherlands, but we've got members across the world. So literally every inhabited continent of the planet has voice members, whether that's Latin America, Africa, Asia,
Great.
Australia, Europe, the States, everywhere.
Okay, fantastic. So if I was to ask you, what is the what is Voice trying to achieve?
We try to be a watchdog and we try to be a catalyst, which means that on the one hand, we try to cut through all the BS that you often hear in a lot of the sustainability stuff. And I think in the medieval times, you had a king and a king had a court jester. Now, the job of the court jester was not just to make jokes. The job of the jester is actually a really serious one. Because the jester was actually there to say the things out loud that other people would get killed or disinherited for. And I think sometimes that's our job, is to be the court jester in the most serious way possible. We can say the things that other people can't say, whether that's to the governments, whether that's to the companies. We can say the quiet part out loud. So that's a really important thing that we're there for. And I think the second thing we're there for is sometimes to be willing to initiate things that other people might be a little bit hesitant about. So on the one hand, we're a watchdog, and on the other hand, I like to think that we're a catalyst for new thinking and new approaches.
Excellent. We're going to get on great then, because I play that role in the coffee industry.
Excellent.
Word. I should put that on my LinkedIn, coffee industry court jester. Everyone would agree with you there. So in this specific episode, we're going to talk about the landscape of cacao trading, right? So can you explain to us what the landscape of cacao trading looks like? And if you could, you understanding how coffee is traded, if you can draw some parallels about that, because there are some parallels, if I understand that.
There are definitely parallels. There's also major differences, and maybe I'll start with the differences, because cocoa is a crop that isn't consumed in the places where it's grown largely. So there's a couple of exceptions, like in Colombia, there's actually quite a lot of local consumption, and in Brazil as well, but those are very small cocoa producer countries. The vast majority, and we're talking like 95% of the world's cocoa, is grown for export. So it's very different than coffee in that the people that grow it don't actually know what they're growing as a consumer. Yeah, I
am
see you
going
want
to
to
say
jump
that.
in there
Correct.
immediately, so go for it.
One of the major problems that we have in coffee is that coffee producers don't typically drink coffee the way that look, Ethiopia is an exception, but Ethiopia is changing, and a lot of producing countries are new to the idea of establishing coffee shops in their region. But traditionally, and the big problem in coffee is that coffee producers don't know what the end product tastes like, so they don't know how to grow coffee for the people that they're selling it to.
And when they do, it's often kind of like instant coffee, et cetera, and stuff like that. But in cocoa, you don't even have that, right? So there's like the amount of media and journalists that have taken film teams into cocoa producer areas, given bars of chocolate to the farmers, and this is the first time they've had a bar of chocolate. I mean, there are so many of those across the world, right? So like if you're a journalist in cocoa, please don't do that again. That's really cliche old hat. So but so that's one thing that's quite unique about cocoa, is it is purely an export product, just about. Second thing is very concentrated. So there's like 8 countries in the world where almost all of the world's cocoa is grown. And in the rest of the countries where cocoa is grown, it's often kind of unique quality heirloom. And so kind of the issues there might be slightly different as far as kind of from a bulk perspective. I think another thing that's important, especially for people from a coffee background, the specialty market in cocoa is very small. Like the vast majority of people that consume cocoa and chocolate basically have never had good chocolate. And that includes most of the people that are listening to this podcast, I'm assuming. And so let me just be a complete snob here right now and say most people don't actually like good chocolate. The thing that they want is the bad stuff that is milky and sugary, because that is what we grew up with. It's what our palate knows from a very young age. And so if you actually want to get into quality chocolate, you're teaching yourself a new product, as opposed to quality coffee, which is like, it's a couple of next steps on the gradient, so to speak. With chocolate, that's not the case, because you switch from milky sweet stuff to bittery, dark, serious stuff. It's like the step from, I don't know, lemonade to whiskey.
Right.
And that's big step, right? So it's a distinctly different market. And I think the last thing that probably also is really important to understand is chocolate isn't consumed very globally. Chocolate is consumed very much in Europe, the US, Australia, and Japan, and very little elsewhere. So there's a real dichotomy there. So if you would take all the chocolate consumption of Japan, Australasia, Europe, and North America together, you'd probably be close to 80% of the global chocolate consumption. Now that's completely different to how coffee is done. And so as far as that goes, that creates several power dynamics, because you're asking me kind of to explain how the trade system works. It also means that it's very much a traded product at a global level, which means actually the traders, there's not many of them, and they're very much, it's like an hourglass, and the center of that hourglass is incredibly narrow, right? And so if you then take in, and then the brands that sell the final product, there's also not that many global mega corporations that do that, like Mars, Mondelez, Nestle, Ferrero, Hershey, and Lindt. Those 6 together do about half of the world's chocolate brand, right? So, but the big traders together, they probably about 80 to 90% of the world's cocoa goes through 3 to 5 companies. And so you've got an incredibly narrow base of, what is it, maybe 25 million producers? And then you get into a place where maybe 15 corporations have everything going through them to about 1 billion consumers globally. So it's got a very narrow thing there, a narrow center. If you consider the fact that there's also not that many cocoa consuming nations, and there's not that many cocoa producer nations, it means that actually the decisions that are made around what can and can't happen. I sometimes joke that if I would have the right 40 people in a room and they would do what I tell them, I could solve the problems in cocoa overnight. That small of a basis of real power that we're talking about in the cocoa sector. Now, those people are never in a room together, and they will definitely not do what I tell them to do. And even if they would, I'm probably wrong regularly as well, so I'd probably stuff it up too. But it shows how concentrated that market is. But it also means that we can have pretty interesting dialogue with everyone, and that you can know everybody. So remember when earlier I said it's my job to be in contact with everyone? It means that that's actually not too tricky a task to fulfill.
Okay. And with regards to what recently, like before we get to the next episode, coffee is traded on a futures market, right?
Yep. Cocoa, yes.
Cocoa. I'm sorry about that, everybody. That was last week's series.
Yeah.
So it's traded on a futures market. Now, I want to ask, is there also a separate cash market, or is there some kind of regulation that requires cacao to be sold on the commercial market?
So the commercial market is generally there as a buyer and a seller of last resort. So you can actually easily go around that if you want to. But in the end, the terminal market does determine what the going world market FOB CAF prices are. So there is a terminal market that does have a really important role to play in determining the price, but a lot of companies also work around that. But still, when they work around it, the price they pay is based on the dynamics of the terminal market.
Okay, so folks, if you've been paying attention to any of the news that's been happening around commodities this year, you know that there's some weird shit that's happened with cacao. And you, at the very least, know that the price of cacao has gone through the roof. We are going to start exploring that in the next episode. So join us for the next episode, where we're going to start to really get into the nitty-gritty of the meat of what everybody wants to know about from you, Antonie. So we'll dive in the next episode. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward.